Hey guys, it's Jenna Elfman from Fear the Walking Dead. I play Laura. No, I play Naomi. No, I play June. I play June on Fear the Walking Dead. And you're listening to the Fear the Walking Dead talk through on Talk Through Media.
Hey, I'm Lindsley Register, and I play Lara on The Walking Dead. You're listening to The Walking Dead Talk Through on Talk Through Media.
Hey, this is Ross Marquand, and you're listening to The Walking Dead Talk Through.
Awesome. Hey, this is Mick Stahl, and you're listening to Fear the Walking Dead Talk Through.
Cool.
Hey survivors, welcome to episode 95 of Fear the Walking Dead Talk Through. I'm Kyle.
And I'm LT.
And this time I'm Brian, and not a combination of both LT and Brian.
Hey, it worked either way. All right. So we'll be covering Fear the Walking Dead Season 7, Episode 12, titled Sonny Boy. But first, we did get some feedback about the last podcast, Fear the Walking Dead Season 7, Episode 11, titled Ophelia. And the first comes from Erin from the internet. And she wanted to welcome back Brian. She did a little hand wave.
And like I said, I'm back, right? Look at this. 2 episodes in a row.
Yes.
I'm back.
With 4 more to go. So
I wasn't lying. I wasn't lying.
No, yep, definitely plus for the rest of the season. And she continues on. She says, I feel like Strand is at the crater doing things since they want to make this a thing this year. It wouldn't surprise me if he's letting out zombies to pad the walls of the tower. How many actors went off this show? And that was a quote from you. It's like, I can think of at least one, sadly, and it feels she's halfway already out the door. This is a perfect rating, Brian. And then she's a little hand clap. She says, Wes at the tower makes no sense given he's anti-Strand. And given in this episode, makes no sense. So we should get to that. And then LOL comes on. Come on, fellas. You know no one is actually watching this show again to do captions and features, right? What do you think this is? Something popular like the main series? Ha. And then she said, hi, Teresa, and then a hand wave.
Hi, Teresa.
Yes, Teresa. Happy to have you on board. All right. Well, thank you, Aaron, for your feedback about the podcast. You want to take Mike?
I shall. Mike from Asheville says, yes. Thank you, LT. I was writing in to talk about Daniel's memory loss in Lawton. That was played off as if he was faking it. Yet here we are with real memory loss. This has to be bad writing, right? The progression of this memory loss makes no sense. Long-term versus short-term memory loss makes sense. I've witnessed it personally in my life, but the overall arc here I'm chalking up to bad writing.
I was just going to say that there was... I need to probably go back on Hulu or something and watch season 6. Although, do I really want to do that to myself? Actually, season 6 wasn't as bad as, say, season 5. But the point being that there was a point late in season 6, or maybe mid in season 6, where something happened to Daniel. And, he went from faking it to actually getting hurt in some way. And I don't remember the circumstances, and I don't remember who did it, but I do remember that it happened.
Yeah. I don't know if it was if it was something with the Rangers or something that it was mentioned or something like that. But yeah, I haven't gone back, so I'd have to go double check it.
Yeah.
But again, they tell us that kind of stuff, but then they don't follow up through it. So it's it was probably mentioned, but then we never saw it to actually know that was it really bad? But anyway, so continue on.
Okay. He goes on to say, also, back at the dam, when Daniel moved the guns but then couldn't remember doing it, I guess I just want to know what triggered the memory loss to start. There was a mention of him being beaten and tortured in Lawton, but again, he was faking after that. I'm just confused by it.
He didn't move the guns. That was, he was believed to move the guns, but it was actually that
Raleigh.
Yeah, well, not Raleigh, but somebody working with Raleigh that was actually that kind of blamed Daniel.
Right. But it was the fact that he got that sort of was the first indication
that something was wrong.
That something was wrong.
Right. Oh, well, I mean, we'll just have to see how this progresses, which probably is not good. All right. Well, thank you, Mike, for your feedback from last week's episode. All right. Well, then that was all we had. So let's go into this week's episode. It's Fear the Walking Dead, Season 7, Episode 12, titled Sonny Boy, written by Justin Boyd and Jacob Pinion, and directed by Ron Underwood. Description from AMC Plus was Dorie Sr. searches for Baby Mo as Strand grows increasingly paranoid. All right. Well, that leads us into our ratings. I'll just, because we mentioned, or actually, LT, you mentioned this, or you mentioned the word. So
I did.
Part of my rating from this week is 7 defenestration legacy smegacy. Defenestration legacy smegacy.
Yeah, that would. I'm always giving you shit for mispronouncing words, mispronouncing words, and that was funny. And I think I would have trouble mispronouncing that.
It's defenestration.
See, it's not that hard when
defenestration.
When you say it. Yeah. I'm gonna give this one 7.5. Don't let the Dories hit your ass on the way out.
Ow.
and you went off the show too.
Yep.
Well, I gave it a 7 out of 10. It's raining minions. Hallelujah. It's raining minions. Amen.
That's a good one.
Since you stole my favorite word there, it seems that we've hit on a trend.
Yes, for sure. Well, what was funny was we had just finished recording last week's episode, and then I watched this episode right after recording. I was just like, I thought that we were just kind of joking, and it's like, nope, here it is. And I think I even text Brian too, just like, okay, this is a thing. They went all out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And did they ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were still talking smack about poor Ali taking the dive.
Yeah.
And this was like, yeah.
Like, yeah, within the first 2 minutes, it was like 6 people or whatever. They were just
I'm like, criminy, is there going to be anybody left?
right. All right. Well, let's get into our listeners' ratings. All right. Our first listener's rating comes from Glennis from Toronto, and she says 6 out of 10. Another one bites the dust, or maybe many others bite the dust this episode.
Well, of course, and you know what goes with that? And another one's gone, and another one's gone, another one bites the dust. Well, the next one up is Emma from the UK, who gives it a 7 out of 10. This tower ain't big enough for the both of us.
Hey, we're going to throw you off the building too. Another one bites the dust. Mike from Asheville gives it 7.5 out of 10.
And Aaron from the internet gave it a 2 out of 5. Ouch.
Will that make it a 4 out of 10?
Yeah, guess. Well, low. That's the lowest she's given. So, All right. Well, thank you, listeners, for your rating. So that leads us into our awesome sauce. All right, our first awesome sauce comes from Glenn from Toronto, and she says, "Quick thinking by John protecting Mo, and June by making themselves a gated community to keep out the walkers."
And Mike from Asheville says, "Okay, hear me out. The shot of Charlie in bed calling to June made me laugh. Thanks, Fear, for showing us that she's getting worse." And moving on.
That's
Mike
awesome.
and Kyle are kindred spirits.
Yes. Because I was happy to see that scene too. I was like, is she not dead yet?
Stop picking on Charlie.
All right, next.
Sorry. Well, since we're all sitting here looking at each other, Emma from the UK says, Dorie and June finally growing a pair and standing up to Victor. I liked Dorie doing his detective bit. We finally got to hear Howard's motivation. As soon as we knew that, we knew he was a goner. Dorie knocking Strand out with the gun. And then it went downhill.
Yep, more to say on that part.
Indeed.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you for the awesome sauce listeners. So let's go into our awesome sauce. I didn't really have any because everyone else kind of already mentioned some of the stuff that I enjoyed. So Brian, it looks like you did have some.
Well, I just wanted to say something in general. I still like the title sequences that they're doing. And I don't know, there was something about this one that made me think of mentioning it here. Strand's off his gourd, and he's just paranoid, and I just not necessarily to give that an awesome, just I think Coleman Domingo is chewing up the scenery right now, and he's entertaining to watch, and of that, I will, give him an awesome sauce as a result. Mm-hmm. Particularly his big belly laugh when he realizes that John, kind of did a Strand move to curry favor, and he's like, what did he say? It's like, oh, you planted it, or you did that to curry favor with me. that big laugh. I got a kick out of it when he did it. Making John Dorie Sr. And to that end, I'll add making John Dorie Sr. throw Howard off the roof, and to that I thought of, and you get thrown off the roof, and you get thrown off the roof, and you get thrown off the roof.
Everyone gets thrown off the roof. It literally was an Oprah moment. It was just like, what?
Well, and since you're talking about that, I thought it was funny that everybody else has gotten the backwards flip off the roof, but Howard got the belly face first. You get to see it coming off the roof.
Right.
Yeah.
Because John belt buckle or belted him.
Yeah.
Grabbed him by the seat of the breeches and tossed him over.
Yeah, and he let him have an upper decker. He belted it out of the park, so to speak. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a just over the fence kind of thing. It was
toss. Yeah.
Yeah. He ended up, and a lot of them watching it, they would end up just, and end up in the portion, between say the building and the fences, and obviously they would, I don't know, bring him out to wherever, but in the case of Howard, he ended up over the fence. So if he was still alive when he hit the ground, he wasn't alive for long.
Nope.
And of course we see him later, being a walker and he's still
no, he was a crawler.
Okay, he was a crawler. That's a good, better way to put it. Yes. I was going to say unable to walk, but yes, he was a crawler. His death was overdue, yet very satisfying because, being Strand's toady, he needed to die, but it took, like 3/4 of the season to actually happen. So Strand keeping Howard's family's death a secret, I put as awesome just to show the how evil Strand has become during this season. It's I actually have this listed elsewhere, but I just put that to say, okay, he's just really, really, really morally corrupt and just just not a nice guy anymore.
Oh yeah.
And seeing Walker Howard, which I already mentioned, but seeing him, Crawler Howard, let's get it right, was also satisfying. And I don't have it written down, but Mo getting out would probably be another awesome sauce. So that's it.
Yep, good ones.
I'll agree with that. Well, when I started looking at mine, of course I had to say Howard got T-dogged. Because we finally get more character exposition. We find out about his motivations. We get that whole speech about the Travis letter and talking about his family. And so we find out so much more about, Howard's motivations, of why he was doing the historical collection and all this stuff. And of course, we all know that when you start getting too much character exposition in The Walking Dead, it means that you'll be on the next episode of Talking Dead with Chris Hardwick.
Unless you're on this show.
Right. Then there is no Talking Dead.
Thanks, AMC. I think the other interesting thing that I thought was sort of awesome was that at the point that Strand said, well, now that you're the second in command guy, you can have Howard's room. And watching Dorie look around the room and seeing some of the things that we saw in Howard's historical item collection, that, there were shots where the camera panned around the room as John looked at things. And notice, that's what he made his escape armor out of. Because when Victor and Wes were in Howard's room after John escaped, you noticed that the chaps in the frame were gone.
Yeah.
And they made a point to show the World War I dishpan helmet that John was wearing that was on a little bust head with a note on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I do believe that the breastplate that he was wearing was on a stand in Howard's room as well.
It was.
And I would even say that I think the boxing gloves that he was wearing were somewhere in there. So
yeah, I believe they were too. I'm pretty sure all of it was, and it wasn't none of that because what the boxing gloves were, I think was from Jack Johnson, the boxer. So yeah.
It's sort of another metaphorical thing that Howard loved his collection and he loved his artifacts, and as soon as he was gone, then they sort of ceased to be as important, and they ended up as Howard was afraid they would, lost out there in the wasteland of the apocalypse. I guess I was sort of thinking the next thing that I thought was kind of cool was it was a pretty, ballsy thing for John to do, to make that run across the parking lot, when I may bring it up later in another sauce, that there might have been another avenue of escape, but he decides to do the John Wayne thing and go out through the crowd, which sort of speaks to his state of mind. And notice that he was like, I don't need no gut poncho.
Mm-hmm.
We ain't got time. I got to go. So he did not do the normal splash on a little, Odie entrails to get through the walkers. He just cowboyed up and went straight through them. I guess part of that was I was going, why, John? Why? Why do the hard thing? And the only thing I can figure, and the reason it's an awesome sauce, is I think that was his last act of repentance, because he realized, I think at this point, he was working on all the things that he had done previously and all the, sins that he has borne for all these years. And he thought, the last good thing I can do, since I'm going to die, since I know I'm going to die because I'm sick, is I'm going to get Mo out of here. And of course, even that said, I'm going to have to refer to this in later sauce. I thought it was pretty awesome when there for a second, I thought John is going to put a round in the back of Victor's grape. I had that brief second that I said, he's going to shoot him in the back of the head. But instead, he does the thing that you do with a single action army. He conked him on the back of the head. And I'm like, yep, that is the cowboy thing to do. And since Brian's already used this once, I had to say, and you get radiation poisoning, and you get radiation poisoning, and you get radiation poisoning. That after all this time, they've been running around, and now it's a plot point that, hey, maybe people are getting sick from being out in the radiation.
Yeah.
Because for a second, when he pulled his shirt up, I'm like, okay, you're an innie. And I had to look at it again to see that he had the same sort of discoloration that Charlie had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they still haven't really explained that very well, that, suddenly Charlie gets radiation poisoning. And so now suddenly John gets radiation poisoning.
Yeah, it's not explained very well, but I'll go into that. That's some of my sauce eyes later.
Yep. And I think the last thing was I had to go, bravo, Wes, well played. You are now Strand's right-hand man by attrition.
Yep. Because there's no one left.
That's right.
So yeah, hey, that's the right place at the right time. So
yep,
definitely well played.
Timing is everything. And even though somebody had sort of hinted at it that he didn't know how well Wes and Victor got along. Well, at this point, it doesn't matter because Victor knows Wes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that may be more of an overriding concern. It's not that he really trusts Wes, but he knows Wes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
they've been through some stuff together. So at least Wes is a known quantity.
Yes, that I would agree with. All right. Well, that was, I guess, it for our awesome sauce. So that leads us into our week.
You're worthless and weak.
All right. For our first week sauce comes from Emma from the UK, and she says, so the Rangers combed the place for Mo, but didn't look in the basement. And Strand was super paranoid, but turned his back on Dorie. Our guys are stood outside, and the Rangers didn't stop them, and they had long enough to record a whole song on the cassette player. And of course, we have a magical walkies, which can always just suddenly get in touch with whoever we want, whenever you want. Yep.
Indeed. Glennis from Toronto says, This was a bad plan from the get-go. Removing Mo out of the equation isn't going to stop Strand or suddenly change his mindset. As he also stated, he's still got Grace, June, and Charlie as a bargaining tool. Although throwing Charlie off the tower would be an act of mercy at this stage to put an end to her suffering. I doubt, in spite of Strand's insecurities, he'd really have gone ahead and killed baby Mo. I don't think he's that far gone. Strand knows full well if he harmed baby Mo in any way, Morgan and company would attack the tower even more ferociously.
Yeah,
he wouldn't do that because I think that's part of his legacy.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't have Mo, who does he, Mo basically carries on his legacy. That's what he's thinking, I think. So.
Yeah, no, as this episode was all about legacy, I mean, that would make complete sense because he even tries to basically say okay, I'm taking care of baby Mo myself and nobody else. It's I'm just going to groom her how I want, protect her. Always good points, Glynis. Thank you. All right, well, Brian, you want to take Aaron?
Aaron from the internet says, Charlie will so die an easy death instead of going out via Madison or Alicia. Yeah. Or via Kyle. Also weak, Howard dying this episode. I'm fine with him dying overall, of course, but the fact he went out now feels really weak. Why aren't we allowed to have cool villains for longer periods of time, writers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they could have made him last a little bit longer, but I think I was okay with him dying when he did. That's why I thought, he might be overdue because he was basically just a toady of they didn't give him much dimension beyond kind of just being a yes man to Strand, whereas say Simon on the main show had become this guy who had visions of replacing Negan, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yep.
Right.
And I thought overall Simon was a much not that you would know, Aaron, but Simon was a much more interesting villain versus Howard.
Yes, he was far deeper, more well-rounded, and quite more villainous.
Yeah, and scary.
Yeah,
and unpredictable. Yeah, that's kind of what I kind of went into in my week sauce. So that was all for our listeners' week sauce. I'll go into mine. I would have to say though, I mean, I was a little shocked that Howard died this episode because I wasn't really expecting it, and it came so early in the episode that I was like, oh, okay, so he's in trouble. This is this is not gonna, this is not good. But the thing I kind of had for my week though was there was this whole thing, at the beginning, it was all these we know that Strand doesn't want people communicating outside of the tower. So there's there's the telephones, I guess, inside the building, but no one's allowed to have walkies. So it just seemed very weird though. It's okay, so this was this one rule that's just oh, you break this, you are put to death. And then they find the walkie in Howard's room. And that was enough for Strand to turn on him. I get that they're trying to play him as oh, he's just unstable or he's paranoid and this and that. But I still was thinking it's this is a man that Strand has known from the start. So a lot of time has passed. And I feel they would have been almost kind of bonded. They would have, before people started joining the tower, they would have been talking to each other, getting to know each other and all that stuff. So I don't know. It seemed very I don't know, okay, I guess this is just where the state of, Strand is. So he'll turn against
shallower than it probably should have been.
Yeah.
But don't the Rangers have walkies?
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe it's that they have to take their walkies in, at the
And turn
door
them
when
in?
they, yeah.
Yeah. Or
I think I want to say we've seen an episode where Howard was carrying a walkie, so I just thought it was kind of odd that all of a sudden now walkies are verboten.
Well, right. I mean, that
Or
and
maybe,
also
maybe it's got a big sticker on it that we didn't see that says Morgan's walkie.
Or USS Pennsylvania or something.
Yeah. It's like, where does this walkie come from? Oh, it's from the sub. But again, it's like I don't know. I found it weak being like, oh, this is what is going to put Howard in the crosshairs, because I felt like Strand should distrust Dorie Sr. more than he would have distrust Howard, just because of the length of time that they've been interacting. Because it seems like Strand doesn't like our people, and probably more towards Morgan. But it's like he's kind of made that point towards like, no, I don't like you, but then he keeps letting these people in, so it's like that makes no sense. So I don't know. I kind of found it's like, oh, okay, this is just what's going to be the thing that makes him turn on him. But then that goes into the other part, which so Howard goes on to his whole monologue about his family, which was like great to finally get more information about his character and his past. But of course, that's always not a good thing. And so he was talking about how like his wife left him before the ZA started because he forged that Travis letter or whatever. And I guess was spending more time traveling and speaking about this letter that he forged. And so she left him and took her son with her.
Right.
So I was like, okay, got it. But what I don't get is why he would think she would be searching for him all this time. And it was like, hasn't the ZA been going for like 7+ years or 6, 7, 8, 10? Who knows at this point? And it's like, and during all that time, like he's never tried to find her on his own. Like, was he just sitting in this tower this whole time waiting on them? To me, it would I felt very not plausible, because like at some point after all this time with no word, news or whatever, that she is like even still alive. And then Strand, we do see that he tells John that he found them months ago and they were already dead. But again, I was just kind of like, okay, Howard, what were you doing all this time before Strand arrived? It was like,
waiting for other people to give orders to.
And how long? Yeah. So it's like, how long did you stay in that tower or that floor, like for the whole entire ZA until Strand?
Listening to Mozart, sipping bourbon, looking out the window.
I mean,
I believe he only went out to grab stuff to bring back to his lair.
Yeah. Which again, still is kind of like, okay, I don't understand. I mean, I guess the only thing I can understand is that he was hoping and dreaming that they would come back into his life. And so he never went and actively sought them because she probably, she left him for a reason. So I don't know. It just seemed very like, okay, whatever. I didn't quite get why all of a sudden after this long that you're still waiting and not thinking that she's dead. Like everybody's dead. You keep throwing them off the roof.
Yeah, I had a similar kind of reaction to it that, it's like they're acting like, only 20% of the population is dead at this point. And it's like, no, it's probably more like 99% or, 99.9%. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, that's all I had for my weak sauces.
Okay.
Take it away.
I just thought that the muddy shoes were too obvious.
Yeah, it was.
And the way that it was just, kind of let down there was too obvious. I also thought that John Dorie Sr.'s radiated body looked fake to me. His belly button didn't look real.
Maybe it was a stunt torso.
Yeah. What else? Were they carrying around Baby Mo in like a it looked like one of those not dumpster things, but the
like a
bins,
the plastic
plastic bins. Yeah. So I thought to myself, she's going to suffocate in there. So that was just I thought that was silly, and the way that the water just like went from like it being completely dry in there to gushing in like I thought that was kind of ludicrous, because I don't think it would kind of happen like that.
Right. It seemed very like, okay, this is like obviously some kind of basement with a tunnel or something. Could say maybe like it's a drainage thing, and they've been showing it raining the whole entire time. But I was like, okay, what was it that at this moment there was that much water that there was this flash flood? They've been showing us that it's raining pretty much the whole entire episode. That it was like, what was it at that moment that was like
the downspouts? Well, the downspouts are clogged with walkers.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Or perhaps a crawler is laying over the grate that drains the parking lot,
and they got moved, and that's perfect timing.
Let's see what else. I think someone had said it. Maybe you did, but that the whole thing about like just throwing everyone off the building. For one thing, it's like if you do that for every walkie-talkie that's found, it's like you're suddenly not going to have anybody in the tower, right? So
right.
And that part of it seemed kind of ludicrous to me. And what else? I agree about people thinking it's kind of ludicrous for him to think that Howard would just suddenly do that, because he didn't seem to he seemed to be completely loyal to him,
right?
No signs of being a turncoat or anything like that. So for him to think otherwise is just kind of ludicrous to me. So that's it.
All right. Well, LT.
Well, I'm going to have to start with, so no one looked downstairs. I'm struggling with this one because Strand is so worried about defending the tower and having up his barricades and all this other stuff, but we never, they never really explained how wrestler lady got out, and so now we know. There's an access tunnel or a storm drain or whatever that was underneath the tower.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem odd to you that they've lived in the tower for all this time and no one has thought to look in the basement?
There's even an elevator that goes to it.
Yeah. It's like, say, what does this B mean? I don't know what the B means, but we're just going to the first floor, so don't press the B button. I just struggle with that because, again, if it was me, if I was the one that was occupying a building, the first thing I would do is I would know every nook, cranny, corner, access door, point of entry, point of exit. I'd want to know where the plumbing ran that drains the shower. I just really have a problem with, okay, you have this large, easily accessible point of ingress and egress that no one's guarding. It's not locked. There's no barricades. It's just a nice, big, empty, wet corridor with the occasional walker. So that's hugely weak for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling with the fact that now John is going, hey, June, I'm sick. it's like your daughter-in-law is the only medic.
Yeah.
You've been living there for a while, and this is not something that you just suddenly wake up one morning and go, oh God, I'm swollen and misshapen and I'm breaking out in sores. I'm struggling with that because it's like you're fine until you're not. You're sick when you need to be, and suddenly when you get sick, it's going to be horrifically debilitating.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about the walkies, we keep going back to the walkies, and I guess I'll keep going back to the walkies, but it's okay. We're all using about the same brand. We already said, how do we know that this is a Morgan walkie-talkie versus a Ranger walkie-talkie? I just, it makes my head hurt because as far as I can tell, they're all about the same. They all seem to be the same kind of Motorola walkie-talkie, and I just don't understand why suddenly, because Howard had one. Well, maybe it was because it was taped underneath his dresser. I don't know.
Well, and it's like if walkies are like such a thing that like, I guess like the non-ranger populace should not have, then wouldn't you think though that someone would be monitoring walkies or like monitoring the radio so that if
one would think that all you'd have to do in that case is have a scanner.
Right. And they
you don't
have
need
a big antenna.
I was going to say that. And I didn't say it. Yeah.
You don't actually even need a transmitter. You just need a scanner, and you just program in the frequencies and hit scan, and it'll sit there. And if it picks up a signal, and suddenly it's the, Morgan, hey Morgan, I'm at the gate.
Right.
Then you would
gotta find Morgan.
Then it's like, then you would know.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's like, isn't the crime not that you have the walkie, but that you use the walkie?
Right.
Yeah, because it's still pretty inert until you press the button. So, the one thing about the tower that is beginning to bother me just a bit is that there's no one around until they need to be. Because all those scenes where John's like in the hall, in his room, somewhere else, and there's no one around. Now, we saw that there was a goon squad when they were grabbing people and searching people before they started chucking all these people off the roof. So we know there are people in the tower, but are they so spread out that you never, it's not, we don't even get the scenes at Alexandria where you have the random unknown Alexandrian walking by in the background carrying a rake.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, there's someone there. And I'm like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
And I guess the last thing that I was thinking about is, okay, so of all these people, and you're going to say, we're going to hold them hostage. Why are you worried about Wendell?
Yeah.
Of all the people, Wendell's going to have the hardest time getting out because unless he builds a little tank around his wheelchair, put some kind of armored screen around it and goes out the same way John Sr. did, I just don't see that he's much of a threat as far as, because they were like, well, we're going to hold June and Grace and Wendell hostage. And I'm like, well, Grace can run off and June can run off, but Wynn's kind of stuck.
Yeah.
That was the silly part when, near the end, when John had left and, those guys, they have, the machine guns or whatever, or all those semi-automatic. I don't know whatever those big guns are. You got June, you got Grace. Yeah, they can run away. And then at least one of them or two of the dudes point their guns at Wendell. And it's like, I'm looking at it going, where the hell's he going to go? You know?
Now, granted, he may still he could stash some weapons on his chair.
Right.
Sure.
But as far as making a break for it, not seeing it.
Yeah, right. And it's like, it's more of like, he's like the one that like would be worried about passing information to the other people or using a walkie to like report on things, that kind of thing. So it's like, okay, yeah, you want to hold him hostage for that. But yeah, it's like, oh, I need to hold you at gunpoint because you might get away. It's it just, yeah. That was that
I'm going,
scene.
Okay. And especially the fact that they're on the roof. Where's she going to go?
Were they on the roof or they were the front entrance?
Well, I'm just saying. At one point they were on the roof, and then at one point they were. At one point they were down on another floor, but it's still the same point of. How's he going to go? I mean, I just don't see. And like you said, he's got other things that he can do. He can be eyes and ears, and he can maybe do some things because they don't suspect him because he can't run off. But still, as far as being a threat, he's going to be a threat in a different way. He's not going to be as much of a physical threat.
Right.
But like I said, I just was going, why are you worried about Wendell? You can worry about, I'd be worried about, June and Grace. I might even be worried about Wes since he just showed up.
Right. Well, right. Because, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it seems like Grace and June basically have like full access to the tower. Like they can walk and go and do anything. So it's kind of like you're not worrying about them so much because they seem to be able to do whatever they want. You're not controlling their, like, keeping them in the room and like, okay, June, you can only go from your room to the little hospital area. And Grace, like, I don't know what she's doing there, but, she's just obviously not taking care of the baby. Anyways, that was there anything else to add, or we can go into our what sauce? Because I have a lot of stuff
I think the next one is going to be whaties.
Alrighty. All right. That takes us into our what sauce.
What?
All right. Our first what sauce comes from Emma from the UK, and she says, they set up that large antenna quickly. And surely Strand's people could just take Morgan or whoever else out from the roof. They're not that far away. And Emma, you took the one I was going to say. Like,
I thought that too.
I wrote that in my notes. I was like, it was like, well, he's like, oh, Wes, there's an old antenna down in the basement. And then, John Dorie Sr. is like not even halfway through the walkers. And then next thing you know, it's like this huge antenna is all set up. And I'm like, wait, what? I even wrote that in my notes. I'm like, okay, that was quick. And then from the basement.
Well, I guess the elevator works now.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it was just in pieces, but still, whatever. It was like, okay, that was quick. All right, well, next.
Aaron from the internet says, shouldn't they be checking people off the side they don't walk into? Also, how did they just walk in there with Wes? Ugh, I'm so confused about the tower protocols. Actually, all the safety protocols on this series by people. What are the rules, writers?
I think that those that get chucked off the roof aren't following COVID protocol. That's what it is. Anyway, that was my feeble attempt at a joke.
Thank you, Dr. Malashi.
Mike from Asheville. So, no mention of where Strand disappeared to last episode. I wondered that myself. No fallout to the butterflies being let out or Charlie being there.
Right.
Well, that's really why they threw Ollie off the roof. It was the butterflies.
Yes. Oh, dang. Yeah, again, I can't disagree there because it's where has Strand been? Howard was like basically in control, admitting why Strand was gone. And then all of a sudden Charlie's there and it's just like, okay, Strand knows who Charlie is, but then be like, okay, well, why is she here? How'd she get in?
Charlie.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your what sauces. So that'll go into ours. And I kind of, had some of the same what you said, you guys said in your weak sauces, but I put them in my what's. And the first is like, am I correct that I'm calling them pus bucket walkers are coming from the crater, or that those are the walkers that are like irradiated or something, so they are dangerous to be around? Because like Arno in the last episode mentioned something like then it was a pus, like a pussy looking walker that they stabbed from the wall, and he was saying it's like, oh, that's like the third one today, and then he told Sabrina to get the body and like to draw them away. And then I was starting to think, and then I went back to episode 2 of this season, 6 hours. And Morgan asked what happened to the walkers outside the warehouse. Like that was one episode that had all the really gooey walkers that were on the outside, like smearing all over the place. And the character Bay said that they were coming from the crater, and to not let them near you, and because they like fall apart when then you hit them, and also don't let them like fall apart on you. So my question is like, because if that's the case, then are those the same pus bucket walkers that were in the basement with June and Baby Mo? Because we're starting to see those, and they're actually even outside. Like whenever John Dorie Sr. was like trying to get through to get to, save Baby Mo. So I'm like, so it's like everybody being exposed to this radiation or something. So I don't know. Am I wrong? Because that's just like seems like. Okay, good. Because
I could be sarcastic and say, well, we only have so much makeup effect budget, so bubbly pus walker, you're up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just made my what in the fact that it's like, okay, we've seen these types of walkers and they've made reference to being like, oh, these are more dangerous than normal walkers, and now we're starting to see more of them, and it was kind of like, okay, wait, you like I don't understand, like, is the radiation exposure coming from just being near them, or like how did Charlie, and then how did John Sr. like get the radiation exposure? He mentioned that building, but what was it in the building that was so irradiated? It's kind of like, I don't get what's going on.
And maybe part of it was aggravated by when he was doing the belly rub with them with the gate.
Or yeah. But again, then June was...
If they're that radioactive, then June and Mo would have got some too.
No, right. And that's what I was kind of like, okay, well, you guys are basically all exposed. So it's like, you're all going to die. The next was like, kind of like, we already talked about the walkies being like a death sentence. I think it was just like, so obviously this must be some rule that breaking it is a death sentence. And so many people did go over the wall to their deaths. And then like Strand, it's like he then gets on a walkie at the end of the episode to announce to like survivors outside the tower to join him. And I was just like, oh, I have an idea. Stop chucking people off the roof. like you just like decimated half of your population, and now you're like, oh, I know you guys are out there. Come join me. And I don't know. It was silly. It's like you could solve that really easily by not just murdering all your people.
Yep.
Another question. So Strand wanted to take care of Baby Mo without any outside interference up in his penthouse. But then I was like, tell me again, how many times do you leave the tower for like days that you are actually going to just stay home to take care of her without like having someone there to help you? Because it was kind of like, really, Strand, you really like to go like on trips and like do things, and you're just going to kind of wall yourself because like this is a baby. You can't just like put it down and go leave for 2 days. So I was kind of like, are you thinking this through, Strand? It's like,
well, maybe that was the sub rider in Howard's contract, is that if I'm out of the tower, then you get diaper duty. But you are kind of right that at that point they're not very self-sufficient, and they do require a great deal of maintenance and a great deal of looking in on. And they never really answer the question of, so who nannies Mo if Strand is out of the office?
Right. And if Strand's going to do this whole, I'm taking her up to my penthouse to kind of basically isolate her, then it's like, who is left that you trust, that you would trust her to take care of Mo? Because it's like it's not going to be you. You have to have somebody else, and you just chucked Howard off the side. So it's like, who else is going to do it? So I don't know. I was like, what? I don't get that at all. And then I just put this in there just because I was going through my notes, but I was kind of like, well, so was John Sr. like drunk as hell when he decided to take baby Mo out of the walls? Because we see him just basically drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking, getting back on, which that was sad. But then then Strand comes in, he's all like, basically Strand's like, oh, so you're back on the wagon or whatever. And it's like, oh, fix me a drink. And then that's when he hits him over the head. And then we get into the like, oh, we're saving baby Mo. And I was just like, okay, so he drank a lot, and I'm sure not much time has passed. So it's like he had to not be just not like sloshing his words and then being like more animated. But then of course June and Grace are completely fine with him to just take baby Mo out of the walls. I don't know. I just thought it was funny. I was like, are you really telling me that he's just completely sober at this point? Well, that's all I had for my Walt sauces. Brian, did you have any? Or LT, you want to?
I think I will.
Okay.
I was going to agree with you again. Legacy. They seem to have like that clang association that they have a word, and it seems like that's the word of the episode.
Right. Yes.
You almost end up doing the Sesame Street. This week's Fear the Walking Dead is brought to you by the word legacy, the letter Y, and the number 4.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely hit hard about that being the point of this episode. Everybody wanted a legacy.
Yep. And my what sauce is about your antenna. It's not really how long it took them to set it up or the fact that they did set it up. The question I have is why? Because if you notice, when Strand starts talking on the walkie, it's still just the regular old rubber duck antenna. Mm-hmm. And in case you were wondering, kids, you've got to connect the big antenna in order to make the signal go further. Just the fact that there's a big antenna next to you and you're talking on a radio does bupkis. Because if you will recall, if you watched the main show, when our favorite crazy CIA operative was on the roof of the apartment building and he was trying to talk to Lance Hornsby, he had a piece of cable that he connected his antenna to. But Strand, however, did not. Now, there is one plausible explanation, and that is the antenna was connected to a piece of electronics that's known as a repeater, so that the inbound transmission from Strand's walkie-talkie would hit that antenna, go through the repeater, be amplified, and be broadcast out on another frequency. But, however, he didn't say, go get the repeater from the basement. He just said, go get the antenna.
Right.
And if you're having problems with them just putting up a freaking mast, it would be more complicated if they had to hook something to it.
And in that short time, right? It's that was the big problem, was like this happened in like less than 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Well, now to be fair, I have been on a crew of guys that put up a field mast antenna when I was still in those halcyon days of my youth, wearing camouflage clothing and running around in Oklahoma. You can do it. You basically have a bag with about 5 or 6 poles and some strings and some stakes and some wire and the little antenna that goes on top. And you put up the antenna. I almost said you erect the antenna, which is the correct term. But you hoist the poles in the air, you pull out the guy wires, you stake them down, and suddenly you have a nice big tall antenna to transmit.
Mm-hmm.
But again, there's a wire that you hook to the radio, so it makes the radio talk further. I'm just going, I just expected more of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
But it is Fear, the land of magic batteries and inconsistent distances.
Yeah, and instant antenna from the basement, like it just, they've been doing that to us for so long that it's kind of like, okay, you just have to let it go, but it just still, we'll point it out.
Yes, you have to let it go.
Is there anything else?
Nope.
All right, well, then that takes us into our new sauce, the Oh Hell No sauce.
Oh, hell no.
I think I have a better version of that. I just don't know if it's in here. Anyways, all right, our first Oh Hell No sauce comes from Emma from the UK, and she says, this week's episode took throwing people off the roof to a new level. It's lost the shock factor now somewhat, and I don't know what that's called because LT defenestration is to throw someone out of a window, I believe.
And I will concede the fact, Emma, you are indeed perfectly correct in saying that it is throwing it out of a window. However, I think chucking them off the roof still qualifies.
Yeah, I think it kind of is a reference to just that whole act, regardless of window. I don't know.
And like I say, if you want to be pedantic about it, you are perfectly within your right to be, but I still think that it fits.
Yep.
I know what nitpicking Brian would say.
I'm sure you do.
But he doesn't belong on this show.
All right. Well, then we should just move on then to Aaron from the internet.
And Aaron from the internet says, Wes, just what is the logic here? He leaves Morgan's group to go to Strand and actively helps him, even though an episode ago he was literally fighting him. I do not understand character choices in this episode. Even if he too is playing a game with Strand, he'll have to do shady things to stay in play long enough, and that then makes him no better than the others. So yeah, explain the change. They can't. It's drama for drama at this point.
Yep. Yeah.
Colby Holman, you've been given a promotion.
Basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can't disagree because it's like it made no sense of why he left, because what we said last week, it was like he was just like, oh, people suck, people are people is what I learned. You guys are the same, blah, 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 to being like, okay, so now you're going to Strand, which doesn't he suck as bad as the rest of the group?
People are all the same, so I'm going to go and learn how to do it from the best.
Well, right.
That's kind of what it was,
Yeah.
Well, but look at it like this. If I'm going to be with sucky people, I might as well be hanging out with sucky people with better digs.
Well, guess maybe.
I mean, there is something to be said for that.
Yeah. I mean, he's also picking a side that he thinks he probably has more influence on than, I mean, but that's the thing though. It's then again, yes, Strand knows Wes from previous life or, episodes or whatever, but it's like, he went through this whole arc of like, I don't trust you because you have a walkie or something, to like, and now you trust him. He just got like, I don't know. It just seems like you're the who you choose to trust doesn't quite really make sense. And if that's just a play on how much you've lost it, then okay, fine. But it still isn't really like, this is them throwing shit against the wall and seeing what sticks. I'm like, this doesn't stick. So it's like, at least not to me. So it's like, kind of whatever there. We'll see. That's the thing I always say is we'll see. They're going with it. We'll see. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for your hell no sauce. So I actually had, and actually, I don't know, LT, you kind of brought up that in your awesome sauce that you liked John Sr., basically knocking Strand out. And so, like, I put this in my oh hell no sauce because, like, to me, it's like, so John Sr. comes to his senses that Strand is not going to change. So he decides to knock Strand out with a gun. And then I was like, why not kill him? Like, you had this perfect opportunity to take him out. And then that would solve everyone's problem. And half of the people in the tower, like, they're already dead anyway. So, like, would the Rangers really stand up to him if Strand is gone? And also Howard? Like, Baby Mo that you were saying needs to stay in the tower to, like, survive. Like, then couldn't she stay in the tower and survive with June and Morgan and, like, basically everybody else that you know? And of course, then that would have ended Alicia's so-called war. But it's like, so they went with, let's take Baby Mo outside to Morgan. So I don't know. It just was like, oh my gosh, of course. Like, this was the perfect opportunity that he could have just taken Strand out, like, when Strand was not looking. And literally, like, that would have solved all the problems. And who in the tower is actually going to try to, like, basically go against them? I don't think any of the Rangers, they might leave or maybe, but it seems like with Strand gone, they would have all just fell and be like, oh, okay, cool. Just like the, Arno's group. They just all like, oh yeah, cool. Here's new leader. Let's go. Let's change sides. So anyways, I just was like, whoa, hell no. All right. Well, if you guys don't have any to add, then we can go into our.
Yeah,
or do you have anything to add?
No, I was just going to say just to.
And you blew it! You blew it! You blew it!
Yes.
You blew it! You had it all and you blew it!
That he did.
It took me that long to find it.
Yes, it did. No, I was just going to say, even though he's a bad guy, John's just not going to kill him in cold blood.
Well, I mean, that's one thing to say that, but it just seems like they've made all these other choices that it's kind of like, why wouldn't you make that choice at this point? But that's not quite, I guess, with this character.
Well, and I was gonna say, then what are they gonna do for the rest of the season?
Well, no, right, but I mean, again, we're supposed to get Madison back, and so they could all been hunky dory, and then Madison came back, and then she could have been like the new problem.
And then she gets thrown off the roof.
could have all been hunky dory. Instead, it's hunky John Dory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or should I say chunky John Dory?
Well, he wasn't that chunky.
No, I don't mean that.
He was chewy.
Like,
He was
chewy chunky. I mean,
chewy chunky.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, let's move on. Let's go into our sad and all sauce. Aww. All right, our first sad and awe comes from Emma from the UK, and she says, it was sad to hear Howard had been hoping to see his family when there was no chance, and of course to hear Dorie was sick for some very specifically located radiation, and then to see him sacrifice himself at the end. Yep, agree.
And Mike from Asheville says, John Sr., the whole goodbye of that character, like watching a cowboy ride off into the sunset. His intentions were all good. He unfortunately got sick and had to make the most of his time. Throwing Howard off the roof broke him, though. Glad he got Mo out.
All right. Thank you, listeners, for your sad and awe sauce. So that leads us into our sad and awe sauce. I kind of agreed that just this was, seeing John Dorie Sr. die, it was kind of, I don't care about Howard. But it's like, again, here's like another one of our characters, just doesn't make it. And they are killing them off at a very fast pace at this point. So I'm like, who's going to survive the next 4 episodes?
Well, yeah. And it's the thing with John Jr. was my favorite character and they killed him. And then John Sr. showed up and I'm like, yay, my new favorite character is still John Dorie. And then they kill him off. So it's like, I can't like anybody. Okay, wait a minute. No, Victor Strand is my favorite character. No, it just seems like we get somebody in that they do something with and we like them and they die.
Yeah.
Which, granted, if you remember the way I modeled the original show was you had the 6 degrees of Rick Grimes, that the closer you were to Rick, the less likely you were to die, but people still died and people that were still family died. And fear.
I mean, think about that for a minute though. You got especially in the first couple of seasons, you had Shane, who was pretty close to Rick. You have Lori, who was his wife. Then, later on in the season or in the seasons, you have Carl, who was his son. And, you could get pretty close to Rick and die. That was for sure.
Well, yeah, but for the most part,
unless you're Daryl,
they didn't die as suddenly as some of the other people did.
True.
Right. They weren't like true red shirts. They were, that was something that has changed like a lot now too with the main show, but it's like, but that was part of it too, being like, oh, but they could be one of the ones that dies, or gets hurt.
And we still never got to quite Game of Thrones level of character risk, but they still used to kill off people on the main show more often than they have in Fear. If you think about it, of the main characters, there really hasn't been a lot of major deaths since maybe
Travis.
Yeah, since like season 2, season 3.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that Fear has pushed the envelope for people's survival quite a bit. And it's like they're playing catch up now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we thought, Madison was dead, or that, she was presumed dead until
she wasn't.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it is kind of make it, it kind of makes you think though, it's like with Madison coming back that they're now starting to basically, this is season 7. So a lot has happened since the beginning and, even since season 4, but it's just kind of like, okay, are they just going to like clean this all out? And then it's just like going to be Madison and then and somebody else.
Well,
and then
the thing that I realized that I didn't say last week is that, I was wondering, well, who's Madison going to play with, play against? And I forgot about Strand, because Madison and Strand were pretty close. So as long as Strand doesn't end up out,
Right. That would be
and to me, she's the one character who could straighten him out, make him a better character again. So
that would be very interesting to see, because that's one person that he definitely had a relationship with and thinks that's been dead for a long, long time to all of a sudden appear.
Right.
Then that would be very interesting.
And then I could also see her being a character that, depending on her arc, I could see her being a formidable opponent against him. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of different ways they could play it, but
yeah,
either turn him around or turn him into a good person again.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, Brian, did you?
Yeah. I thought that it was sad that Howard's family was dead all this time. Although, I kind of said it already that, how many people would be dead at this point? I mean, I think he was a little naive to think that they were still out there. I thought it was sad that Dorie Sr. has gone back to the bottle. And I could kind of feel his pain there.
Mm-hmm.
And to that, I would say the end of the John Dories. So, the line ends with John Dorie Sr., unfortunately. Yeah.
That is sad, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and, one will say that a father doesn't like to outlive his son, but in this case, it's still doubly sad because we lost a really good character, and we got a good character to replace him. I mean, he had some pretty big boots to fill, but I thought he did a decent job in this role. Yeah. But just sad to see him go too. So
yep,
that's all I have to say.
All right, LT.
Well, I was going to say, even though we talked some junk about him in previous episodes, I thought it was kind of sad that Howard finally bit it, because in the beginning of his arc, you could kind of see that he was trying to hold on to things, because he talked about, if this history is not preserved, if things ever go back to normal, then no one will remember. The whole thing of trying to be that cultural archivist and remember things and try to preserve some of the before time history, and the fact that now that he's dead, it's just like he had never done any of that.
Mm-hmm.
That, we got it since he was getting T-dogged. We did get a sense of that loss and his regret over what happened with him and his family.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of sad, even though he was a horrific toady for Strand and he did some bad things. It was sad to see him, take the dive.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like everybody else has said, I'm sad over John Sr. dying. That I liked his character. I liked the way they brought him in. I think they did some good development on him, and we found out kind of how his brain worked, and we had a character that would try to stand up and do the right thing and was trying to atone for the things he had done wrong in the past. And it seemed that was his motivation there at the end. But the fact that, he just kind of went out. I'm not a fan of now that you've completed your mission, even though you got bit, you're just going to wander back in the crowd to get chewed to death. Maybe you're serving your penance in your head, but I don't like going out that way. I would have rather him seen do something else. And then, of course, the other question that I have is, so after all this time, what's going to happen to John's pistols?
Mm-hmm.
That
John's pistols. Yeah.
John Jr., venerated those 2 6 guns that were his dad's, and took care of them and cleaned them so meticulously. And then Senior got them and June had one, but it's sort of again, it goes back to the whole artifact thing that it's just going to end up, it went from being a significant plot hinge to a significant prop to now it's, hopefully, I'd like to see June get the other one, but that's just me being vaguely sentimental over something I'm sure the writers aren't too worried about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what you're saying about like Howard, but it is just kind of like, okay, well, there is one thing to be sad about that. Yes, that was like a kind of a heirloom that was shared and passed on to now here it is, like as the ZA destroyed the whole entire world, that it's lost to history, and that's really sad that's when the line is broken and it's just out there, or, if the tower burns down and then someone happens to come through shuffling through it, they'll find it and not have any really connection to it. And it's kind of sad that could be the case. All right. Well, that was all our sad and aw-saw. So let's go into our feedback.
We can talk about it. Done talking. Time to listen.
All right. Well, we didn't have any voicemails this week. So we'll go into our written feedback. And our first one comes from Mike from Asheville. And he says, trimming the cast down. Are we making room for more? ? Are the actors seeing the end and wanting out? The final 4 episodes will be interesting, and what they set up for season 8, hopefully the final season, which I think that it's going to be the final season. I just don't see how this continues with the main show ending. Listening to Ophelia cast and Brian mentioned the kids. I never even realized they weren't around. Good catch. When was the last time we saw them? And actually, I went back. I don't know if we saw them after this. And if I'm wrong, and maybe I checked the episodes after too. But season 5, episode 8, it was titled, Is Anybody Out There? That's where they escaped from the exploding nuclear reactor and flew over the hills of Texas and got away. There were the kids from oh dang it, I forgot her name. Well, the kids were on that plane when they took off, but then after that, like, we never see them again. And so that was really the last time. So that was quite a while ago. Was it Annie? The girl, the kind of their leader, was her name Annie? I can't remember, but yeah, the tree.
It may have been. I don't know.
It sounded
have to
familiar.
go back and look.
Yeah,
something
okay.
like that.
Yeah. So yeah, last time we saw them. All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Who wants
They
to take
flew away just like the ratings.
Oh. And that leads with Aaron from the internet, who says, this might be the most boring episode since the return, and we've wasted an episode on the Charlie one-shot hookup. John's logic is meh at best to me in this episode, so I felt it was just something to air versus being good like others we've seen so far. Also, still don't get Wes's motive for being there. Okay, you don't want to help Luciana, but you're cool helping Strand suddenly? No. I rate this lower than the CW Apocalypse episode because John Dorie is just so dumb in this episode. He totally had his death coming to him just over the facts, hit Strand but didn't murder him to make sure he doesn't lash back out when he gets up. Seriously, did he not think that they, June and Grace for sure at least, won't all be murdered because he did this? I roll. Confusing is the best way I can describe this episode. At least the kids had hormones to blame for their character shifts. Shakes head.
Yeah, nothing else to say to that, Aaron. Thank you. Just, all right, next.
Hormones.
I know. That's
a good one. All right. Next is Glynis from Toronto. She says, look at John Sr. beating Strand at his own game and framing Howard by planting the walkie-talkie in order to get an audience with Strand. But that plan backfired even after confessing Strand still wanted Howard done away with, and Strand shot down his offer of counsel to not deal out such harsh punishments. John Sr. kitted out in the WW1 uniform, charging through the front line of walkers to get to Morgan and hand over Baby Mo, sacrificing himself for Baby Mo and joining Howard as a walker. John Sr. went out with a whimper unfitting for a main character with his important link to John Dorie Jr. Where are his and John Dorie Jr.'s guns now? She brought up the guns just like we just did. In the mud on the tower's battlefield or back with Strand, now that June and Grace will be under house arrest. Wes's time is limited in Fear the Walking Dead, becoming Strand's right-hand man. Just a question of who ends up killing him. By paranoid Strand himself, by taking a trip off the top of the tower, or Alicia or Luciana having to kill him when they finally attack the tower. I don't know. I could see him kind of, I don't know.
I could see him skirting through in some form or fashion, but because Wes,
this is his first big part, so I would think that he would be an actor that doesn't necessarily want to leave the show.
Well, that's true. That is true.
So
that that might keep him around longer.
Right.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, I guess we shall see. Can't come. Well, I'll just leave it at that. All right. Well, I guess then last but not least is Emma from the UK. And she says, I'm going to be watching because it's fun and I want to see what happens. Also, because I like hearing you guys, what you guys all have to say about it. But this is not great TV. Let's be honest. Oh.
No, it isn't. But it is fun to podcast about. That's why I'm back.
Yes. Yeah, and it's like it's kind of like this love-hate relationship with the show. Like there's the moments that it has like that we've talked about, like, oh, I really like that, or like this is really good. But it's just progressed into where it's almost like they don't even care like about any details or nothing. They're just like doing this, they're just telling their story, and it's kind of like leaving any kind of believability or like even like just like the whole reason why we started watching The Walking Dead. It was like this survival, this brutal world, and like dealing with the walkers and like, just dealing with the end of, civilization. And, it just like there's so many things that they could have done that would have been great, and it's just kind of like they're almost like lazy writing. They're just like writing this out, just trying to get to the end.
It's like Z Nation without being funny.
Yeah. And the thing that I'll have to say is, no matter how much we feel like we're bagging on the show, we're still pretty much a big freaking ray of positivity compared to some of the things I've heard.
I was going to say the same thing. It's like, even though we're still in the sevens, guys. Mm-hmm. We're still in the sevens. And the way I have always thought about it is a show has to be in the sevens for me to podcast about it. And if a show doesn't consistently put me in the 7 category, I am not going to want to podcast about it. And the show's still in the 7s, which tells me that, there's enough to, make it amusing to podcast about, because when it gets lower than that, it suddenly becomes a slog. And
right, exactly.
Then all you're doing is just shitting on the show. And there was a lot to like about the episode. I mean, I enjoyed certain elements of it. Some of it scene chewing, but I don't mind scene chewing sometimes. It's there's definitely some scene chewing when you're talking about throwing multiple people off a building. But there's still some elements that you can be entertained by.
Yeah, so. I think that's part of because I've kind of, my ratings have jumped around. Like I've done really low to being like where I'm kind of like you, and it's like it's if I was rating it 1 or 2 every single time we podcast, well then that's kind of like, okay, well then what's the point of doing this? Like, why am I doing it?
And it's like you both have said, is that I don't hate it. I mean, I just see a lot of structural issues and a lot of things that make me go, what? Huh?
Yeah.
Like the first season of World Beyond, I was really struggling with that show. Mm-hmm. And thankfully I came back and enjoyed the second season a lot more. But that was one show where I really wasn't enjoying it that much. But, this show hasn't gotten there to me. I've always thought, like you, LT, I've thought that even though we've criticized the show, we still find it amusing enough to watch. So, and we aren't as negative as a lot of podcasts are. So,
yeah. Well, and I mean, that's just at a final note, at least for me. It was just, I could go through each episode and be like, oh yeah, just wasn't great, blah, blah, blah. But it's also like the overall like story that they're telling. I want to see the end of it. Yes, I'm still entertained and I like these characters and I want to see what's going on. Cause it's like, I liked season 6 with Virginia and that whole ordeal. It was like, I actually really liked that whole season. Like, I mean, I think I rated some episodes lower and higher, whatever, but it's kind of like going back and thinking about it. It's like, no, I really enjoy that. It's like, I mean, I'm still my favorite episode or my favorite season 3. And I think we can all maybe somewhat agree. That was when it was like really, really doing some really cool stuff. But with knowing that Madison's coming back, kind of scared about like, okay, who's going to be left? Like, this is a big question. It's like, are we going to get anybody left? Is everybody gone? Is it just Madison by herself? Or is it Madison and Strand like we were talking about? That would be something very interesting to see. So yeah, it's been entertaining. It's been fun to podcast about, and it's just, it's like, I'm not really not liking it. So. All right. Well, thank you, Emma. Well, that was all our listeners' feedback. I think unless you guys have something else to add, I don't really have anything else to really.
I don't have anything else shocking or revelatory to bring up.
Yeah. All right. Well, then that leads us into our news, ratings, and info.
What the hell is happening?
I have no idea.
All right. Anyway, Fear the Walking Dead was even with last week in the 18 to 49 with 0.14. And it's got 717,000 viewers total. That is down from last week's 743,000 viewers. In the 25 to 54 demographic, it got a 0.23. In the 50 and over demographic, the coveted 50 and over demographic, It got a 0.44. You know, it's funny now because when both shows started, the lowest rating was in the 50 and over, and now the highest rating is in the 50 and
50
over.
over.
Yeah. Anyway, so it got a 0.44 in the 50 and over. Last week, it got a 0.24 in the 25 to 54. So just, you know, 1/100th of a point down, and 1/100th of a point down, with 0.45 in the 50 and over last week. So again, no Talking Dead this week. Parrot Analytics, we don't have any Parrot Analytics because they haven't published them yet. So they've been kind of erratic in their publishing of parrots. So they'll sometimes go 2 weeks without publishing them, and then they'll have like 2 days in a row where they'll have them. So in any case, but there's no parrots since I think the last time they were published was April 29th. So did you cover April 29th last week?
I believe
probably
so,
right.
Yes, yeah, because I found it. Yeah, we covered it.
So that's it.
All right. Well, there wasn't really any news that I could find just that was of note. So we'll just continue on.
Well, just one thing, and I know that everybody else may have known, but Dead in the Water is on YouTube with all 6 episodes. If you didn't know.
Yes, and
there
I
you
posted.
go.
Yep. There. Okay. Thank you, LT, for the news, because actually that was news. I posted on the Facebook group.
Yep. And if you haven't seen it yet, it's like I said, it's 6 episodes. They're all about 10 minutes long. The same as the was it Flight 743 that they did earlier?
462.
462.
Yeah.
It was.
I think it was 462.
Yeah, whatever. But they did the mini series the same way. If you haven't seen Dead in the Water, well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
You get to understand why Riley was hanging out with Teddy, and I really wish they would have done it sooner, but
Yep, agreed.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah. It would have been good if it had come out prior to the sub showing up, or instead of like basically in between season 7, if they had done it in between season 6, would have been.
Yeah, it would have helped.
Or after season 6, between season 6 and 7.
Perhaps when it would have been relevant.
Right.
Right.
But at least we got it, and they didn't hold it on AMC Plus for too long. That was my worry, was that they were going to try to use that as like, oh, no, you can only see this if you subscribe. So, yeah, check that out. The link's on the Facebook page. All right. Well, LT, you want to tell people how to interact with us?
All right. We want to encourage you to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Walking Dead TTM. To submit your theories and feedback, most people post in our designated episode thread in our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/WalkingDeadTTM. You can send us email. That's walkingdead@talkthroughmedia.com. You can also utilize our feedback forum. That's found at talkthroughmedia.com/feedback. You can leave us voicemail. Just call area code 216-232-6146. Remember that's only about 3 minutes. Also, all of our new episodes are on YouTube. Just search for Talk Through Media and remember to subscribe and click that bell to get notified when we have new videos. Those videos go out first before the podcast does.
And to support us, like and review the Talk Through Media Facebook page at facebook.com/talkthroughmedia. The best way you can support us is in our Patreon, and you can find that at patreon.com/walkingdeadtalkthrough. And we would like to thank our Patreon supporters, Renee Murray, Dieta Patterson, the guy over there, Lawrence Todd, and me, Kyle McAdams. Remember that Dieta and Renee will be getting an early version of this episode this week. And you can subscribe to us in Apple Podcast or your podcast client of choice. And while you're there, give us a rating or review. You can also leave us a review at podchaser.com, and there you can actually rate individual episodes or the whole podcast. And as always, remember to share our posts on Facebook and Twitter when we post them, or tell a friend. Word of mouth is the best way to get us new listeners. Well, what else can be listened to on Talk Through Media?
Well, there's quite a bit. First of all, we are still releasing. We've completed the Star Trek Discovery podcast for season 4. That's all done. We're still releasing episodes of the Star Trek Picard cast. LT and I recorded one yesterday, and actually LT and I have recorded 3 podcasts in 3 nights. So we on Monday night we were doing the first episode of the Star Trek Strange New Worlds talk through, part of our rebranding. So we're going to slowly change the episodes, or the podcasts over to use talk through in the names. So the new podcast covering Strange New Worlds, as LT, I'll give you credit for it because I put it up to a vote, and you were the only voter. So, but I agree with you. Yeah. So anyway, it is the Star Trek Strange New Worlds talk through. We are going to do that as a 3-person podcast. The first episode was just the 2 of us. It hasn't been decided who's going to be the 3rd yet. Hopefully we'll have that settled by episode 2. We are still doing the Star Trek Picard cast. I just released episode 2 earlier this week to the main feed. Episode 3 has been released to the Patreons. So that will be coming out to the main feed, as will the Strange New Worlds, and then of course we've got 2 episodes in the bag for Picard that have been recorded but haven't been edited yet. First one with Kim substituting for Ruthie, and then Kim and LT substituting for Ruthie for episode 5. So anyway, and of course Rebinge Deep Space Nine is still going on, and of course this podcast is still going on. So
yes,
as you know, because you're listening to it. But yeah, that's what we got going on. So you'll be able to hear LT and I twice a week, because LT is going to come off as Crash Davis,
coming off
the dugout,
coming off the bench, going back up to the bigs for some Star Trek podcasting. And it's Strange New Worlds, which I am really excited about.
Yeah. The first episode was really good, and we're really excited about it. And I know, Kyle, you are as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, doing something with hazelnuts or whatever, maybe we'll have you on one of these weeks. But so that's going on. We got a lot going on right now.
Yep, we do. Awesome. All right. Well, next week, Fear the Walking Dead Season 7, Episode 13, titled The Raft. Written by Nazrin Chowdhury and Nick Bernardone.
I think it's Bernardone. Yeah.
Directed by Gary Rake. Description from AMC Plus is Dwight and Sherry must decide between their code and their safety. All right, so until next time, I'm Kyle.
And I'm LT.
And I'm Brian.
And this is Fear the Walking Dead Talk Through. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.